Yeah, hi, my name is Lorenz Kustosch from TU Delft, and today I would like to present work that we did on consumers' expectations in IoT, security and privacy, together with colleagues from Radboud University in the Netherlands. So we know that security and privacy incidents with consumer IoT devices are still quite prevalent, for instance due to unpatched security vulnerabilities or undisclosed data flows. However, the way IoT manufacturers address such flaws with their products is quite inconsistent. So some release security patches, adjust data collection practices, even recall the product, and some show no response at all and the device would remain thus vulnerable. And users, on the other hand, generally are in a poor position to fix their devices due to a lack of technical knowledge, for instance, or to a lack of available tools. So they usually will have to respond in their own way or trust the IoT manufacturer to fix it at some point. So the question arises then, what kind of rights and support users can expect when something goes wrong with an IoT product? For instance, let's say you have a friend, Alex, and her connected security camera got hacked, or she expects that it got hacked, and can Alex then expect her device to be patched or fixed, or can she demand a refund or a secure replacement? And in the legal domain, product liability and conformity law in several countries and legislation such as the US and EU include the concept of reasonable consumer expectations, where the expectations of average or ordinary consumers can help to set a baseline in court, or also for regulations as to which kind of rights consumers can expect legally if there's a problem with a product that they have bought. But what is actually reasonable to expect in case of IoT, security and privacy? And while previous work has indeed looked at IoT users' expectations, such as which security measures should be included or implemented into IoT products, how data should flow, or which actors should be responsible to protect devices, this more normative focus, that is users' preferences, how things should be, does not quite capture what is reasonably or realistically expected from consumers once something goes wrong with a product. So in this work, our motivation was then to clearly differentiate between these two concepts of expectation. So on the one side, what is realistic to expect or reasonable, and what is preferred or normatively expected, and then measure these two constructs empirically as well. And to explore consumer expectations, we asked several research questions. The first one being, what do consumers expect how manufacturers will respond to emerging privacy and security risks with IoT devices, pertaining then to the concept of reasonableness, so what is realistic to expect. Then secondly, what do consumers expect how manufacturers should respond to these same security and privacy issues. Then this is how things should be normatively. And finally, how do participants evaluate the user's responsibility to handle emerging privacy and security incidents? And to answer these research questions, we leveraged a vignette-driven online survey with 862 participants, which we recruited on the prolific crowdsourcing platform from different countries. And the vignette is a fictional text-based scenario, or kind of a short story, if you will, which presents slightly different variation each time. And we presented 7 of these vignettes to each participant in a random order, and we based them on previous empirical work and news reports to make these stories as realistic as possible. So here you can see an example vignette which we used. As you can see, we varied 4 different aspects of factors within each vignette that you can see in different colors. So firstly, there were different kind of IoT devices. So here in this case, the user Alex has an internet-connected security camera. The second factor then here in red was a different security or privacy-related event which occurred. So here Alex learns that there is a vulnerability and her security camera could be used for DDoS attacks. And then in blue, a third factor was the manufacturer response. So different ways how a manufacturer could respond to this. Here in this case, the manufacturer notifies users with a statement on their website. And then finally, the user, so Alex decides to respond in their way. And here, Alex decides to try to get a refund. And this approach allowed us to systematically vary different aspects or factors within each story to then measure the effects on participants' expectations. And after reading each vignette, respondents were asked these 3 questions, which also constituted our main dependent variables. So first of all, if the manufacturer response was likely. Second, if the manufacturer response was appropriate, so this would be then a normative expectation. and finally, if the user's response was a suitable way to move forward. And we measured all these questions on a 7-point rating scale. And to analyze the responses, we used these vignette factors as categorical predictor variables, predicting in several regression models the expectations of the outcome variable, and then we visualized the average response patterns across these different vignette factors to see the general trends. And please note that I will only present a selection of the main findings here due to the time. So the first research question, what is reasonable to expect from manufacturers, how security and privacy risks are handled. We found that in general, respondents saw it as most likely that the manufacturer would announce a patch to address an arising security vulnerability, while no response at all from the manufacturer was seen as significantly less likely on average than all the other options, so which also include the manufacturer informing users or announcing a recall. In case of vignettes describing a privacy incident, respondents rated it as most likely that a manufacturer would update their privacy policy to inform users about questionable data collection in this way. And interestingly, a manufacturer not responding at all to privacy issues was seen as less likely than the other options here, however, as much more likely than in case of security issues. Then our second research question then was to study what consumers expect how manufacturers should ideally respond. So for these normative expectations, we saw a more differentiated pattern. For vignettes describing a potential security incident, again, respondents generally rated it as most appropriate for the manufacturer to patch or recall the affected IoT device. And as a matter of fact, patching was seen as the only manufacturer response which was likely and appropriate, indicating an overlap of preferences and expectations. And again, all manufacturer responses were rated as significantly more appropriate than a manufacturer not responding at all and the device would stay vulnerable. And for privacy risks, participants preferred that the manufacturer would announce an update with more privacy settings so that the user would have more agency in controlling the way data flows. And both informing users and announcing this privacy setting update were rated as significantly more appropriate on average than a manufacturer not responding at all. Yeah, and finally, we're interested to see in how respondents would evaluate the user's role in handling the situation when something goes wrong. So in case of security events, we saw that respondents rated it as most suitable for Alex to demand a refund and try to get the money back or replacement device, whereas Alex's decision to keep on using a potentially compromised machine was rated significantly lower. And interestingly, in case of privacy, we found that continued use, so that the user would just continue using this device despite the risk, was seen as comparably much more okay than in comparison to security. And we saw that there was an apparent difference in risk perceptions for security and privacy, respectively. And finally, we saw that respondents to privacy events were generally rated with small average differences, and indeed that just turning the device off so that the user would just stop using a device which they have purchased was seen as a second most suitable user response, which was also rated comparably for security. So this lack of a clear preference what the user should do illustrated general feelings of helplessness and resignation towards privacy and also towards security, which was also reflected in open text responses, which we collected and analyzed, but I will not go into detail now due to the time. So in sum, we found that, discrepancies between what consumers saw as reasonable and as appropriate were there, highlighting the importance to clearly differentiate between these two concepts when studying users' expectations in general. Our work also highlighted the importance of establishing better support structures for users, having IoT devices post-purchase, so after they've already bought the device, in case there's arising security and privacy issues, so to give them better tools and advice which is specific and timely so that they are able to make better decisions and get their devices fixed somehow. So then also, to really go beyond prevention, but also consider reaction. And finally, our empirical approach to understanding an abstract legal concept such as reasonable consumer expectations can support policymakers and legal scholars as well in their work by challenging assumptions they might have for consumers or technology in general, and showing how these things or how these constructs can be understood empirically. So yeah, in sum, it seems reasonable to expect an IT manufacturer to patch security flaws, but there was some resignation for privacy flaws, and there was no clear, suitable path for resolution for the user. And that's it. Thank you.